had quite a bit, and we discussed a lot, and you in our conversations, and you answered quite a bit of the questions. And so for those people that are watching, that will be watching the video, let's find out who you are, because you are Ryan Taylor, and tell us who you are and what you do and how yoga has impacted your life, and or music, and or any type of wellness and spiritual practices that are influencing you and your evolution, and how you got started, where this all came from, and how is this impacting lives of other men in your community. And then we'll dig in.
How much time we got? We have an hour?
We have an hour.
You know, Christine, it all started for me. Actually, just, to sum it up, drumming started for me at a very young age, at about the age of 8. And, it's in the rock scene for a long time, and got introduced to some like West African Afro-Haitian drumming when I was living in Indiana and Chicago back around 2003. And it completely opened up everything. I thought I knew everything there was to know about drumming, and I heard that and I was floored, and I realized I didn't know a damn thing. So I was turned on to a few people in Indianapolis and Chicago that practice like Vodun and Santeria and Candomblé and other ATR traditions. And I was more fascinated with the drum aspect. I mean, I respected the spirits of Orisha, the Loa, but I wanted to know more about the drumming. And the more time I spent with the drummers in Chicago and then in Haiti, we'll get to that a little bit down the road, the more they started to teach. For me, it was about the more respect that you show to a culture. And it's not so much like understanding the country that a tradition comes from, it's understanding the culture of how the tradition was founded. There's two completely different ideologies right there. So I wanted to learn more about the culture, and started learning the language in Haitian Creole and of course Spanish. And the more I sat in as a willing participant, and the more I showed respect to the culture and didn't scoff at it, wasn't skeptical about it, the more they taught. They see you coming with a full cup, they already think there's not much to teach. So I emptied that cup and took all the years of drumming that I had and just threw it out the door, and was like, please show me the way. I just kind of like sat down with my little sticks, and I was ready to go. So it has, it's been something I've been involved in for about 17, 18 years now. And it's had me travel, Africa, Haiti, and Europe, and other parts of our pristine earth that we're on. Mm-hmm. And it's opened me up to truth. You see any type of spiritual practice, be it yoga, be it drumming, be it martial arts, if it's true to your nature and true to your form, then your true self comes out, and that was taught to me by masters and by elders, in Africa and Haiti and Cuba and the Dominican Republic. And it was taught to me by self and by spirit. You're taught various songs or various rhythms, and you know how to play them, and you set an intention to them, and everything else just falls into place. So I gave up my engineering career. I was a quality engineer for 25 years. I gave that up, and I wanted to teach what I had been taught, and move people and just see the unification that it creates. I've done some work with you in New Orleans and work here in the Dallas area and all over. And people come in with the idea that, oh, I don't know how to do this, or, oh, I don't have rhythm. And first thing I say is we all have rhythm. Mm-hmm. If you can walk and breathe, you have a rhythm. It's your song. Find your song. That's what it's about. Mm-hmm. It's not about what the guy next to you thinks, because we're all beginners at some point. It's not about looking, like an idiot or a fool, for lack of a better term. It's about digging deep inside, mm-hmm. and finding that truth and that rhythm that we all have. We all are creatures of rhythm. We have the mother's heartbeat when we're in the womb. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing we hear. That's the first instrument we hear is the drum. So it is ingrained in us to be creatures of rhythm. There's no way around it. And I've been teaching these principles for a long time. They help me on that is my yoga. I'm not much the yogi master that you are. And you are, shit, let's be frank. I've done work with you several times down in New Orleans, and you you know what you're doing, and I take those same principles that you put in your classes and I apply them to the drum. It is about movement. It is about circulating energy. We're not just playing a drum. There's actual movements that you have to do when you're doing sacred spiritual drumming, and there's ideologies and applications that you have to use to get what you want to manifest in the real.
They sound almost similar to the 8 limbs of yoga that we learn in yoga teacher training, and how we apply the way we live our lives through our connection through the practice. And so the practice of drumming is a form of living those 8 limbs and climbing up the ladder to reach your own bliss, or Atman, or God, or your divine source, or supreme being, is climbing up the rhythm ladder to finding that space.
Absolutely. And drumming is yoga. It's a form of union. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what yoga means, right? It's to unite or to join.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the nail, bro.
So it is another form of yoga, and there's so much I could share. I mean, it's just, it has put me where I need to be. It has put me with the people I'm meant to be with. It's put me with the partner I'm meant to have. It's put me with the child that I'm meant to have. It's put me in the spiritual practice that I'm meant to be in. And had you asked me 20 years ago if I would be doing this stuff, I would have said no. I was in the rock band. I had the engineering degree. I drove the white BMW, lived in the suburbs of Dallas, and would go shopping at the Galleria. And if that's your thing, that's your thing, but it wasn't my thing. And I hadn't found myself. And a lot of people are starting to break out of that shell, and that's what we need. And that's my mission, is to help people find their medicine, because we all have medicine. Nobody is any greater or more powerful than the next. It's just about finding your power. That's what we need to have happen, and you do it with your amazing yoga practice in New Orleans, and you're supporting the community, and you have your foundation, and you're spreading out your 8 limbs worldwide. And that is something to be respected. That is something that people need to take heed and understand, that it is about a culture. It is about an idea. It is about spiritual connection, and it is not about ego. And until people can break through that ego, they're not going to be at the level that they need to be, and they're not going to find their power. So drumming is a practice like yoga, in that when you have someone who's new at it, that ego stays at the front door of the classroom, or stays at the front door of the wherever you're teaching, because most people are like, I am out of my element. I am not comfortable. I am not complacent, and I am conditioned to think that I can't do this. And it takes a teacher like yourself, or someone that, like me, that has had the training with other teachers, to share with them. I don't like to use the term explain. You're sharing your knowledge. It's tribal knowledge. Once they get past that, I can't do this coat, and they hang it at the front door, then they keep coming back. They keep coming back to drum. They keep coming back to do downward dog. They keep coming back to whatever their practice is. So this is no different than the amazing yoga that you do, or a martial arts instructor. It's just another form of connecting to the divine.
And I love that you said it's another form of yoga, and about connecting to the divine, because that's exactly where we're headed. This month of yoga, we are focused on men's empowerment and men's healing, but it's also still part of our internal practice, which is through the 5 koshas and the 5 different layers of the human body, or the human form, basically, I should say, really correct myself. And the first layer that we have been working on this week is Annamaya kosha, which is how we nourish our bodies. What are we taking in? It is also the furthest from source. It is the one that we find is the most disconnected. And when we put ourselves into this form of what is actually known as nada yoga, the yoga of sound, and basically what you offer is the yoga of sound through drumming and tribal music and indigenous cultures and indigenous tribes, and how they influence it through their spirituality, and how they have literally figured out how to break through that layer, and basically like fast forward you straight up all of those layers into Anandamaya kosha, which is attaining Atman, or God, source, divinity. The divine feminine, which just before we had this conversation, just before our interview, I was on the call with Mitchell Blyer, who's another phenomenal yoga teacher and leader, who collaborates as well internationally. And he spoke exactly those words. He spoke about culture, that breakthrough of the ego. So this seems to be a consistent pattern not just with women, but with men, and men also kind of more, something he even mentioned was, it's like men losing their foundation. It's like they lose the identity. And so when you speak to another form of yoga being this, not a yoga, the yoga of sound, how does this stimulate, like you talked about it being the heartbeat. It's the first beat that we hear in the mother's womb is the drum. How does this stimulate, you think, men versus women, or in general, as you observe them in tribal drumming ceremonies that you offer? And how do men respond to the drum versus women? How do you observe that? And then how do you respond to it? How does it stimulate you?
So I would say in the years that I've been doing this, and that's a great question, because a lot of people don't really bring that to the table. They just want to do it as a collective conscious. And, we all are trying to create that collection, the no divide and conquer. But every now and then you need to honor the masculine and you need to honor the feminine. One brings one to the medicine and one brings the other. So in the years that I've been doing this, it has, up until recently, primarily been women who come to my events, because in my experience, women seem to be more open when it comes to exploring new ideas or reaching out to find a new path, because, and again, this is from what I've experienced, the feminine mindset is not as reticent, or let me rephrase that, they're not as reluctant to want to try new things. Mm-hmm. They're all about, let's do this and let's go out and try to, look, a drum circle, let's go and do that. So, because, and even though, no disrespect to my masculine brothers, and I have a lot of them, women don't really seem to put a lot of emphasis or care too much about what the next one thinks. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Women are a little more open to being vulnerable. If they have a weakness, they're okay to share that. They understand if you want to call it the goddess relationship or the sisterhood. Women can rely on one another to cry on one's shoulder, for a hug, for whatever it is. We men, especially in the Western mindset, and by Western mindset, I mean, the first world, not just the United States, but in the Western mindset, have been conditioned and taught that being vulnerable is weak, and that being sad or crying is a sign of weakness. It is, in fact, the complete opposite. When a man is able to show his weakness and break down and cry and grieve, that is a sign of strength, because you are not in the mindset of really caring what the next person thinks. You are opening up to the sense of being that vulnerable to where everybody can see your weakness, and that takes strength. You're busting out of that shell. So in regards to the events of the drumming that we do, yes, up until recently, it's been primarily women who come, and of course, women, they love the tribal drums. You've experienced it. I've done sessions with mainly ladies at this point, and they really don't hold back. The dancing starts, the feet start stomping. If I'm teaching chants, they're all about the chants. If I'm teaching about different spirits, they're all about wanting to know about it. Getting in touch with that, and they're very open and very sacred, because the woman is the mother, right? Y'all are the mother. You're the mother of this, and you take in the seed of mankind. Mm-hmm. So we as men, we have to respect that. A woman is, like you, for example, are one of the most strongest women I've ever come across. I sense it, I feel it. But I've also, been there when you've been, just at the complete other end of the table, and that's okay. It's okay to have that. So women are the mother. Women understand rhythm. They give the rhythm of life through the heartbeats of the womb. They give the song through the voice. They give life through the blood. Men need to find out that we can do the same thing. So as of late, more men are coming to my events, because there is a dynamic shift in today's world. There's a dynamic shift. There's a shift in the paradigm, and men are starting to open up to that motherly and that feminine instinct. Because if you think about it, in the womb, before the sex is actually confirmed, we're all female. Mm-hmm. And then the chromosomes switch, right? Right. And then before that, in the spiritual world, there is no division between male and female. It's just one.
We are being. We're just
being. Exactly.
We're just matter.
Right. And then we come here to have the experience of man or woman. Mm-hmm. So men are now starting to open up to that energetic shift. They're starting to open up to the realization that that is the actual foundation of creation, and it is okay to be vulnerable. It is okay to, you know, me and my friend, you know, the guy that I'm staying with here in Granbury, are strong enough to tell each other in the eye, I love you. He'll go, I
Yeah.
love you too, man. I mean, and plus he's a third degree black belt in karate for 30 years, so I'm going to kind of do what he says. But it has brought more men on the woodwork, and men are opening up more. I've had men at my events cry. I've had men at my events grieve because they're finding that inner song and that inner rhythm, and they're learning how to create what they want to create. The drum is a tool to help take you to wherever it is you need to be. And
How have you attracted these men in this new, like, in seeing that you knew this new, in this really, I mean, I can't get over how amazing in not even 45 minutes, not even, I literally get off the phone with someone who's in Chicago who exactly is speaking to your exact words, like this paradigm shift that we're in. Men are having a paradigm shift. Men, he calls it, I think he went, oh, I forgot the word that he used exactly, but it was like that micro titrate that we are this, just the beyond particles, or I like to say like the Willy Wonka particles, you know, like we are beyond matter. And when you say every man, you know, every man, I'm sorry, these, the way that men are receiving, I want to know, how are you seeing more men coming into your experiences? How are you attracting more men? How are they recognizing that this is actually something they need to tune into, this being strong in their femininity, like Mitchell had talked about Tom Brady and Dwayne Johnson?
you know, in all honesty, Christina, it's been because the guys that have come to my event want to see what their wives are doing. And then when they find out what their wives are, not because they don't trust what the wife, they're curious. You know, they're like, you know, you've been going to this guy's drum events for the last 6 months. I think I want to go check it out. Again, it's the man opening up and being vulnerable. Most men are, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay home and watch the game.
Especially in Texas.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah, you know, football. But men are starting to come out of that shell. And when you have a woman that is your partner that is strong enough to help pull a man out of that shell and is there when he's vulnerable, that's going to help that shift. And that's going to help that curiosity. But a man on his own can also do the same thing. It takes self-inner reflection. It takes breaking down the ego. It's all about losing ego. Everything that we talk about is going to be about shattering ego. Taking a look at what's inside and saying yes to what you typically would say no to. That's the practice I do. I used to always be like, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do that. And a friend of mine here in the Dallas area, she said, you know what? Every day say yes to something that you typically would say no to. And watch what happens. Watch what manifests. So those are the two primary avenues that have brought gentlemen into my class. And the power of the masculine man that you feel when they're drumming, whether they're experienced or leveled or not, is infinite. You know, men, we're strong too. We just need to figure out how to put that strength into a productive environment instead of putting on a shell and I'm a hunter, I'm a man, or you know, me, my partner cooks, I do the dishes. I mean, it's reciprocal. So when a man can find that reciprocal energy in a relationship or within himself, he can start to open up. He can find his own power. And that's what's happening. You know, we're in some interesting times right now, and people are starting to open up because they have nowhere else to go. The mentorship in this country is next to nil. Now the mentors are starting to be recognized because if you take a look at in the society that we're in, people really have nowhere else to go now. So this actually can be a extreme positive change if looked at it that way. So it takes inner looking. So the guys that come to my event, Derek is one of them. That's how I know him. I've been working with him for almost a year and a half. He's one of my students in the drum world. And he's out and about at the moment. I was hoping he would be here, but he stepped out. But he will say how completely it has just made a flip and changed his idea of things. You know, again, it's a tool. The drum is a tool. That's why we have to respect it, because it's meant to take you where you're supposed to go. And these men are starting to find where they need to be. It's improved their relationships. It's improved their job situation. It's improved their self situation. And when I say relationship, not just man, woman, man, child, man, boss, man, community. Men are starting to find their role in today's society, their place in the world. We need that in the community. The women have always known their role. Y'all have always been much stronger than we have. You're open to being vulnerable. You're open to showing your strength. And we men need to honor that. And so men are starting to honor that by going to yoga, by going to drumming, because they want to experience first what the woman experienced, and they want to experience it for themselves. They want to find their own power. So I completely encourage all men to come and drum and just experience it. They walk in big shouldered, chest out. They leave a lot more humbled. Not because I've done something.
Yogi monster posture where you're all
right.
Open up your chest and breathe. Roll your shoulders back.
Yeah. They come in, and they leave completely humbled. And it's not because of something I've done, it's because of what they've done.
Right.
It's the work they've done. Everyone has it. It's like James Hall, the author said, initiation to anything new doesn't open you to brand new powers. It awakens you to the powers you already have. Mm-hmm. You just need to find it. And this
you mentioned something in your interview when I read through some of what you have wrote, and you mentioned men see healing work as feminine, and just removing the tough exterior, allowing vulnerability to surface so a positive change can be made. And I believe this was in response to, how do we allow that healing work to happen, and how we use this tool to embody this. And you had mentioned 3 body states in your questionnaire. And so I want to ask you, what are these 3 body states that we need to work through and work towards? In the world of yoga, they're known as the Kriya Yoga ladder. And so we're working through the samskaras, and then we're working our way up through the vidya and through our ego self. And so in the world of drumming and sacred tribal drumming, can you explain just a little bit about the 3 body states? What are those? And are they related to this Kundalini life force energy that we are so all aware of in this collective world, this holistic world that we live in?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The 3 body states, it's body, mind, spirit. Mm-hmm. And, when you're going into a tribal drum session or a sacred drum session, you have to honor all 3, because all 3 are what makes the vehicle work. Mm-hmm. Not just a physical vehicle, but mm-hmm. the spiritual vehicle at the same time. People need to understand they have to honor their body, because it's a temple. It's mm-hmm. the vehicle that you have chosen to drive around for this experience. So where drumming comes into play with that is, for lack of a better term, it's a hell of a workout.
Yeah.
When we're doing drum circles, I'll have them go for 90 minutes. And it doesn't have to be at an incredible high rate of speed, but it's the stamina. It takes the stamina. It takes proper posture, back straight, shoulders back, chest out. Use your hands properly. Remember to breathe, just like in yoga. You got to keep breathing. I see so many people in a drum, and that's not going to work. You have to breathe. So the oxygen obviously feeds the body, feeds the blood. It gets the heart going. It gets the energy going and the stamina going. And what that does is, when your stamina is going, your heart is pumping, you're breathing in that fresh air that clears the mind. Mm-hmm. So when the mind is clear, we can begin to meditate. Right. Drumming is a form of meditation. The shamanic practices have been doing it for thousands of years. It's no different. It is a shamanic principle. They call it a wind horse or a sonic driver. It is meant to achieve an ASC, an altered state of consciousness. When your body is relaxed and in the proper posture that it needs to be in, the mind can then rest. When the mind can rest, ego steps aside, and you can start to meditate and create what it is you want to create, or set an intention for an outcome that you wish to have. And you're putting all of your thought and all of that power and process into it. The drum shuts down the monkey brain syndrome, and you can now hear what needs to be heard. When the body is
chiti-vritis, the monkey mind.
Yeah. When the body is in the state it needs to be in for pure relaxation, The mind is open because it doesn't have to think my body is doing this, it's incorrect. Now you've created that intention. That's where the spiritual side comes in. When the ego steps aside, spirit can answer the call. Ego blocks the spirit. It's practiced in every tradition. Ego will not allow spirit to intervene. So all three run together. They work together, okay? Now you're able to create what it is you want to create. You're able to connect to the divine in a comfortable, open, pure, honest, truthful way of doing it. And you're boosting up your immune system physically and mentally. So you're doing all three just by simply drumming for an hour. So in a nutshell, like I said, we could go for days, but in a nutshell, those are the three body states. And you know, the definitions can get deeper, but that is on the surface how all three relate to one another and how they connect at the same time.
And we will go deeper in another video, in another call. But in this one, you know, you actually, it's so funny because I'm going through my yoga teacher training material as I'm putting it all together. And I came across the stages of samadhi in the Yoga Sutras. And it was almost just like, oh my gosh, duh, that moment where everything comes together in alignment. And you just spoke about it. And in today's conversation and today's yoga class that we did online, it speaks to Yoga Sutra 140, Paramamahatavanu Saya Vishikara, which means once the mind is free of distractions, our consciousness can perceive everything from the smallest atom to the grandeur of the entire universe.
Yes, ma'am.
Super in alignment.
They walk hand in hand, sister. It's
Absolutely.
It's just a different form of union and a different form of connection.
So right on.
Equally as powerful, but yet at different avenues.
You know, you talked about relationships and, you know, how the drumming connects people with their relationships and how that is something I want to hear more about. What you find in relationship, how has that helped men with theirs?
Oh, goodness. You know, it's, it relieves stress. The drum really helps to relieve stress. And what is the most common factor in the divorce rate in the United States? Stress, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, abuse. Alcoholism and abuse are offshoots of a foundation that is based and built on stress. Most people drink because they're stressed out. Most people, not all, but most people suffer from depression and anxiety because they're stressed out. And men, all those years up until recently, maybe 10, 15 years ago, were told that depression and anxiety were signs of weakness and to deal with it and to live with it. So a lot of people don't realize this, but in the United States, more men suffer from depression and anxiety than women do. But men keep it hush hush because it's a sign of weakness. God forbid I should cry and need to go see a doctor and then be put on a prescription and then have to take a pill every day. Most men are not going to do that, okay? That behavior affects your relationships, be it with a wife, partner, a boss, child, whatever. You're not in your critical mindset of thinking. You're not thinking rationally. Anxiety and depression have been proven to be instances where the serotonin and the dopamine in the brain are not at the levels that they need to be to create a realistic avenue of thinking. Here's where drumming comes in. Drumming increases serotonin and dopamine in the brain. There are Western studies, Dr. Barry Benton, Carl Broom, Christine Stevens, all these guys, they're musical therapists. They're way, way up in their neighborhood and what they do. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. And studies are now showing that drumming does help to release more dopamine, which eases body pain, which eases stress and depression, and which eases anxiety. So when you're not suffering from anxiety and you're not stressed out and you're not depressed, obviously you're in a better mind state. So those that are around you are not going to be a trigger. We're going to instigate an anxiety or a panic attack or a state of depression because the serotonin and the dopamine are now where they need to be. So now you're more relaxed and you're more calm. and you exert that out into your relationships. You now have a better foundation with whoever is in a relationship with you, whatever role that person is. They're not suffering, you're not suffering, because you've taken care of your temple mentally, physically, and spiritually where you need to be. And all of the relationships begin to ease down and begin to work a little smoother. I speak from experience. I lived with, I don't want to say suffer, because when you say you suffer, that means it still has you under its thumb. But I lived with depression for over 20 years. I lived with anxiety and panic for over 20 years. I was on the pill route. I was having panic attacks. I was in a bad spot. Spiritually, that was spirit waking me up. It's interesting because my partner was telling me that Pan, the god Pan, is the god that takes you closest to crossing from one spiritual realm to the next. So panic means that you are experiencing something that the mind can't wrap itself around. So we go and we take medicine to alleviate that. We don't need to be on medicines. We need to touch into the self and do indigenous medicine magic. Grab a drum, play a beat, even if it takes an hour. And another good thing about a drum, you can beat the hell out of it and it's not going to break.
That's right.
You can take, you know what I'm saying? You can take your stress, you can take your emotions out. You know, you might hurt your hand if you don't do it right. So I would advise to do it the correct way, but most drums
your rings off.
Yeah, oh God, yes, please. Every event I'm like, please take your rings off. So when you can beat the shit out of, I know I'm probably saying bad words, when you can beat the hell out of a drum, it releases those endorphins. It releases those chemicals that are built up and tensed up. And most men don't know how to release it. So what do? They drink, they fight. Now this is from a male aspect.
Sure.
Relationships. Women, from my experience and my studies, can follow under the same umbrella. Their depression, they go and hide. They don't want to deal. They become very recluse. So to get them to come out and drum can actually be even a little more difficult when a woman is living with depression and anxiety. But once she's been introduced to that, it's the same ideology as it is for a man. The chemicals in the brain start to release. You can beat out your aggressions. We use the drum. I do practices where I'll have the group use the drum as their voice, as opposed to saying how they feel about something. Play it on a drum, and then the group has to play it back. So that way that person feels supported and heard. If we don't feel supported and heard in our community today, we feel lost and alone. What's the most thing people want in a relationship? I want to feel heard, I want to feel supported, and I want my ideas to be met with compassion and empathy and a response. Play back what I'm playing to you. So anybody can play that, shit. I have the group do the exact same thing. What did you guys hear Christina play? And how did that make you feel? And it starts to create that bond. And now when you create a bond in a drum circle group or a sacred ceremony or a yoga class, they take those ideologies and they take that energy and that relational contact back home. So that's how it helps with relationships from the experiences that I've had. Yeah.
Can you talk more about what you do with your groups and how you do them, how you conduct them, and how people can find them, and if you're still offering them, and how they can participate?
Sure, absolutely. So I basically start off pretty light and easy with just basic drum circles. I don't want to throw too much out to people because they might be a little apprehensive, or, you know, again, it's I can't do that. I don't know what that is. So I'm just not going to go. So I always make it lighthearted and fun. We'll play drums for a minute, just kind of like a simple downbeat. And then I'll have the group, hey, try this chant. This is a chant from Africa. It means such and such and such. See how it makes you feel. Now let's play again. And they play, and then they chant, and they notice that things are starting to open up inside them. So that is how we get started. And it goes as deep as doing like energetic drum healings, where I'll actually stand over an individual with a djembe strapped on as they lay back, and the group is playing a certain beat, and I'll come up over them and just start to play, and it starts to knock out all the negative energy.
Love it.
Sound and vibration, that is the realm that we live in this day. That's what creates everything. You've heard of cymatics, where they do the experiment with, okay, so your body is the exact same thing. It is a molecular structure when introduced to various sounds and frequencies, it changes shape. Your
Mm-hmm.
mind creates the shape that you're in. So now the drumming, now I have the person lay back, set an intention, and let's create the shape. It could be a heart, it could be a rainbow, purple diamonds and blue moons. I don't care. But create the shape and color that you want to be in. Then let the drum do that, and people start to wake up to where they need to be. They release emotions. So
Wow. You literally just said Yoga Sutra 1.39. I'm like Yoga Sutra woman. That's my jam. But it's like quoting the Bible for me. But you just said it. It's a Yatabimata dinadava, which is lastly, equilibrium of the mind can come by choosing an object or symbol to focus on that personally conveys to the mind the concept of samadhi, the concept of breaking down and finding peace. Oh my God, I love it.
that's what it's about, sister. I mean, it's about coming to truth. I want people. The reason I do this work is because I lived in a life of lies, untruths. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was going. I came across this medicine 25 years ago in Haiti and Africa and Cuba and in the upper Midwest with the Lakota reservations up there. And they all say the same thing, that truth and, I'm sorry, they say the same thing, that sound and vibration brings truth. They say it in their own native indigenous tongue, but sound and vibration brings truth. It brings out what actually is. It pulls it out. You have no choice but to let it come out. I do drum events, people laugh, people cry, they scream, they yell, some just walk away, but they suppress it and they do it at home. So my goal is to help people bring out their truth, so that way they see the truth of what's around them and can make a shift. We can live in a collective community that is consciously connected through spirit and truth, to remove the mask, remove the facade of what we're experiencing and get back to who we actually are. We're indigenous creatures of medicine and power, and that's been shut down way too long. We need to change that, and that's my goal. That's what I'm hoping to achieve.
And how can people find your practice? How can they participate?
Find me on Facebook under Ryan Taylor. I mean, especially if they're connected to you, they'll find me the profile picture of the guy with the drum and the long hair. I mean, it's I don't so much have the website anymore because the situation that we're in was hurting people financially. So after pulling teeth for about 3 or 4 months, I decided to go ahead and pull the website, and I'm okay with that because I would rather explain to people in person and have them talk to me via over the phone or Zoom meeting, as opposed to reading a website. You can read a website, for me, this is for me, you can read a website but not get all the information or feel what that person is trying to achieve. So I would rather just interact with the individual like you and I are doing.
One-on-one, more.
Yes, ma'am.
More sacred, almost, in a way.
Yep.
Understood. And can you talk to me about your experience in Haiti and Africa drumming, how you were received as basically, I mean, you are a white male American. You have, in the eyes of the American people, I mean, and come on, from Texas. So, I mean, you've got
everything against me, right?
Everything against you, kind of, in a way, but you have everything that is what we are right now having these heavy, strong conversations about. How were you received as that type of stereotype, as that body walking into spaces of communities of color, communities of culture, communities of rituals that may at first have probably been like, whoa, does he even understand anything whatsoever about what he's about to get into? How did you even get involved with them to be able to break through that divide?
There's still a lot of division and racism in places like Africa and Haiti, especially when it comes to what they call blanc, which is French for white. So they call the whites in Haiti blanc, but it also refers to the lighter skin of blacks. So, and it's more of a socioeconomic racist stereotype as opposed to color to a degree. A lot of the people in Haiti are still bitter because of the transatlantic slave trades that took place 300-400 years ago. I get that, But what people are not seeing and not being exposed to is that all of our ancestors were a slave at one time. Everybody's ancestors were slaves. I'm actually Irish, Scottish, West African, and Native American. So I have all three. The Irish slaves were treated horribly. The Native Americans, we already know their story.
Mm-hmm.
And the West Africans, we know their story. So to be received in a culture like that is done by showing respect, by not trying to prove that I'm white, I'm from America, I'm from Texas, I'm better than you. It's, again, being vulnerable, being humble, being willing to understand the language, understand the culture, understand the food, listen to the stories of what people have to say when they feel that they can open up to you. It takes a little bit of bravery to go into a place, especially like Haiti. It's the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, and it can be extremely dangerous and violent. It takes strength and bravery to go to a place like that, but it also takes passion, and it also takes a love for a certain idea or a certain culture. And they understand in Haiti that if the spirit calls you, then you're meant to be there. This, again, like you said, I'm a white dude from the suburbs of Dallas, Texas. You know, I've got the Texas drawl. I wear a Cowboys hat, and I didn't speak a word of Creole, but I was open to it. I was open and I wanted to learn, and it took years to learn. You have to, I guess, kind of prove yourself that you're not there to try to change what they've got. So being received is, it's a blessing once it happens, you know. And when you get received into communities like that, they love you till the last breath. They never turn their back on you. They're always there. And I just kept working and being diligent and showing respect to the culture and to the drum and to the spirit, learning the songs, learning the language, and then going to ceremonies, what they call a fete, going to ceremonies and bembes in those cultures and being able to sing along and being able to recite the prayers and sit in with the drummers and serve the spirits when that time came. And so that kind of shows to the other people that, well, he's not really white, he's just light skinned. He's one of us, you know. I think everybody, we all bleed the same color. We all have the same heartbeat. We all cry when our child gets injured. We all laugh when our child does something miraculous. We're all the same. And it's getting out of the idea that we're not. It's removing that prejudice. And that's hard to do for a lot of people because of their ancestry or stories that they heard.
What they've been brought up with or conditioned to believe.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you know, I have a son who's almost 3. He's exposed to everybody that I'm in contact with, you know, because I want him to understand people and culture. I'm never going to say he's black, he's Mexican, he's white. He's human. We're all family. We just have different skin color, you know. Does that answer your question?
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you a little bit about, you touched on, and just to, in the next 10 minutes, because next we have Moses Love from Florida joining us for our, for our next interview. So, but I wanted to talk and just briefly touch on it because I'd like to circle back and, of course, have another interview with you and dive a little bit deeper into the bodies and also into the Nada yoga and the yoga of sound with the drumming. But I wanted to talk to you about how humbleism, that word in the male community, to surrender and be humble, to actually listen to your woman or your partner. And in doing so, you're listening to the femininity and the divine self. So you're listening to your authentic nature. So can you talk to me a little bit about how the word humble and surrender are received in this community?
For men?
Yes. For speaking for yourself, because we can't talk to all men, you know, you can only speak for what your experience is and how your, you know, maybe a slightly distorted perception of reality could be based on what you've observed. But because, you know, the mind sees, not the eyes. So based on what you've observed and from your humble upbringing, can you experience your humbleness of how your practice has created the humbleness in men at that softer side that they're beginning to humble themselves up to see?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's and we'll circle back, like you said, and revisit it. It is about men being able to shed their clothes and not being afraid of what is exposed once they've released that layer. And most men, not all, but most men have that coat of, I'm the hunter, I'm the gatherer, I'm strong, I have no weakness, and this is what I am. Well, that is not true. It's true, we have that, but men and women are like an onion. There are many layers. Men want to keep that outer onion on the shell and not let anything else be exposed because it's about weakness. So it's about, we have to remove that outer shell. For me, speaking from my experience, humility and vulnerability were met with resistance. I wasn't going to have any part of it. There was no way, because of my upbringing. I was brought up from a military father. He was in the Air Force for 20 some odd years. He then went into law enforcement and had, that principle. And he was, my father was all man. There was no feminine about him. And so I thought that it was the ideal practice to follow in his footsteps. The way that he was treating women in relationships, I chose not to follow. So I think being able to step out of that conditioned mindset that a man has to be ABC 1, 2, 3, and looking inward and seeing the feminine side of me, because after I left my father, I was then raised by my mother. So I got a taste of both worlds, and she is all woman. She was all about the feminine. So I was experiencing one end of the spectrum to the next. And for me, in my experience in my life, I was able to apply both ideologies and make my bowl of soup. So I use the masculine when I need to use it, when I need to stand up, when I need to protect my partner, my son, my friends, my family, when decisions need to be made. But decisions also can be made from a feminine aspect, from the feminine power, from the goddess, and from the sisterhood. It takes both sets to come together to create the whole decision. It can't all be made by one or the other. So when my brothers that are out there that are still wearing that coat of, I'm Thor, this is my hammer, hear me roar, which is great. That's great, but there's a time and a place for that. And at home, that can come off. When you're around an amazing woman, an amazing partner, amazing woman like yourself or my partner or the ones in the community, we need to understand that we can use women. I hate to say the word use.
I know where you're going with it.
Okay, that we can actually use women as a foundation. I have found that principle and I apply that in my life. I have a very strong woman at home.
You can consider women instead of use.
Yes, consider women as a, we don't want to say use women, that's a different topic. But to consider women as a base and a foundation. There's an interesting saying in Greece. I dated a Greek woman for a while. I lived in Greece for off and on for about a year. In Greece, they say that the man is the head of the family. The woman is the neck. You know what I'm saying? So when men can understand that it takes both to come together, and it takes both ideologies, and it takes both mental states, you have a better foundation.
Absolutely.
So I ask my brothers always to shed that coat. Keep it on when you're outside. You might have to protect your family. Yes, you're 6'6" and 300 pounds. Your 4'10" wife is probably maybe not going to be able to handle the situation, but that 4'10" woman that you have at home is just as equally as powerful as you are, and can bring the community together just like men can. So we need to respect our sisters. We need to respect our brothers as well, and find that common ground.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and your voodoo ceremony that you are about to partake in. Congratulations.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I can't wait to hear about that in our next call, and how that is going to be a transformative experience, especially because we are now in the autumn equinox, or basically about to go into it. And this has been just a huge transformational experience in this year alone, and now going into this last part of the year. So can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yes, this is going to be great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And again, where can they find you and how can they contact you?
Again, you know, Facebook is my avenue right now, Ryan Taylor. If they need help connecting me, they can find me through you. If they're not connected to you, that's why I took, you know, made it simple, Ryan Taylor.
Are you on Instagram or just Facebook?
I am under Ryan Taylor Drum on Instagram.
Ryan Taylor Drum on
Yes,
Instagram.
ma'am.
You got
Yes,
it. All right. Well,
happy birthday again. I love you, sister.
thank you so much. And I love you too. And you will hear from me soon. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Namaste.
You too. Bye-bye.